Welcome to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Hey guys, real quick, before we jump into the episode, I need you to do the 3 S's for me. What is that? First of all, I need you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss an episode of our podcast. Number 2, I need you to share it with your family and friends. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else. Lastly, I need you to say something. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to see from us, what you like, what you don't like. We are open to your suggestions. We want to know everything that you want to let us know about the podcast. All right. Now, get back to the episode. All right. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to our podcast on all of your podcast listening platforms, as well as our YouTube channel. Make sure you guys are checking us out on our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network, where you will find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as our sister podcast, which is the Girl Dead Discussions podcast. Both of those podcasts can be found on our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Again, make sure you guys go and follow us there on the Deal to Heal with E. James, on the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube. Also, our product of the week. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase. And our product of the week this week is our mantra t-shirt, which has the Deal to Heal mantra on it. Deal with your problems, heal from your pain, and fulfill your purpose. It is always the shirt that I'm generally wearing. You guys can get your official Deal to Heal t-shirt on deal2healtees.com. That's deal with the number 2 healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys go to the number 2 healtees.com to get your official Deal to Heal t-shirt. And also you guys can see the other inspirational shirts that we have there. But today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest. Miss Robin, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to be with you.
Good to have you. Good to have you. First of all, let me say thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So, Miss Robin, we're going to jump right into this thing. Do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah. I am Robin Ferguson. So I've had kind of a winding career road, which we may get into a little bit, but I'm a transformational coach. So I work with people who are in the midst of change, who are in the midst of healing. I work with leaders and executives that are running organizations, helping them be more effective. So that is what I do. I'm also out there speaking and have the book, The Phoenix Effect, Transcend Limitation and Ignite the Power Within You. And so I talk a lot about that, because it's basically the mission that I share with you about healing from your past, from your story, and writing a new narrative.
Yeah. I love it. And you know, that's what we're all about here on the Deal to Heal podcast. So do me a favor. Let's go back into your story a little bit before we get into, you know, the work that you do, because I always say there's a story before the story, right? There's a story of us and our lives and the things that we've made it through before we decide to take our pain and turn it into purpose and begin to help others do that same thing. So who was Miss Robin like earlier, in your life, and what was that initial incident that you went through, that made you then have to come out on the other side to say, okay, now I'm gonna help others.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, we all have a story, right? And,
Mhm.
I started out as a really timid, shy kid. I was basically the only child of older parents. My dad had some undiagnosed mental illness. And so we moved around all the time. By the
Mhm.
time I was in third grade, I'd been to four different schools. So I was always the new kid, always trying to figure out how to fit in, how to belong. And as a kid, that's not an easy thing, and
Mhm.
especially when you're shy and unassertive. And so I learned pretty quickly to start to define myself by the people around me and the things outside of me, because I was always trying to assess the situation and who I needed to be to fit this school, this town, this place, these people. And so I was also a pretty sensitive kid. And so I always, was aware of other people's pain and suffering. And so the kids that accepted me were usually the kids that were kind of considered the outcast for whatever reason. Either they had, were from a different culture, a different ability, whatever it
Mhm.
is. So I ended up hanging out with a whole variety of people that were not accepted in with the cool kids and
Right.
the mainstream kids. And so it made me really sensitive to this idea of not belonging. And it really, as I healed from that, as I worked through my own stuff, it became a mission to really see people, to help create a space for them, even if it's just within our conversation, for them to feel safe, for them to feel
Mhm.
heard, for them to be accepted, no matter what their life story is, no matter what they're going through. And really have made that my life's mission. I started as a nurse, and then went into ministry, and from there went into coaching. And so it's my whole life has been dedicated to uplifting humanity in some way, because I know what it feels like to not belong, and I want to create a space for people to not only feel that, but also to see the potential and possibility that lives within their own story, to overcome and to be whatever they want to be in life.
Yeah, yeah, I love it, and I'm listening to your story, and it mirrors mine so much, right? Because I was definitely the shy kid growing up, and I was
Mhm.
in a funny space, growing up in high school, because I was quiet and kind of kept to
Mhm.
myself, so I wasn't popular at all. However,
Yeah.
my best friend and my brother, who was only 1 year younger than me, both of them was popular, right? So I kind of
Mhm.
got to hang with the popular kids because I was, by connection, and then on
Yeah.
the other side, I was, hanging with the quiet other kids, again, being drawn to people who were kind of as quiet as I was, or quieter, so we
Yeah.
just kind of hung together. So I was like in that right in between space, but
Yeah.
definitely a similar path as you, wanting to create that safe space and going into ministry also, and then doing
Mhm.
this work that we do now. So similar
Mhm.
similar paths that we've
Yeah.
been on. I want to go back to one of the things that you were saying about exploring your personal story, right, and even being
Mhm.
able to help a person to walk through and find those defining moments in their lives that make them who they are, and that's why I always ask about what's the story behind the story, because even
Yeah.
us who get into the work of ministry, or coaching and things of that nature, it's because we have a story as well. I
Yeah.
always talk about, I've been through the depression and divorce and suicide ideation, and so I talk on those things, but I can only talk about it because I lived through it. And so
Mhm.
even for those who come to you to work with you, how do you help them even begin to find those moments in their own lives that are significant, that if they paid attention to it, on one hand, while it may seem negative in the moment, it actually can turn around and be one of their greatest assets.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really what compelled me to write my book is, I start with the story of my son Drew. When he was in high school, he was in this play called Dead Man Walking. So if you're
Mm,
familiar with the movie or the story, it's based on a true story of a man who murdered two kids on Lover's Lane, and the
mm,
nun who kind of walked with him to his execution, trying to understand the families that were impacted by that, trying to understand and get into the head of this murderer. So very intense subject matter. And so my son played one of the kids that were murdered. And so he was commenting from above during the whole play. And the nun goes to his dad's house and asks about, what he was like. And he said, oh, he was an athlete and he was popular, and basically describing my son's personality. And
mm.
then she said, do you have a picture? And he said, yeah, it's right here. Hands her a framed photo, and it's a photo of my son. So, as a mom, you're in this intense kind of
Yeah,
place, watching this unfold. And the woman in front of me, her son was playing the murderer. So she's watching him on his like march to execution. So we're just coming out of there a mess. We were sharing
yeah.
Kleenex, and we're just emotional wrecks. We come around the corner and there's our boys in the hallway, and they're laughing and they're high-fiving each other. They're getting flowers from girls. They're like, yeah, we killed it. We were all, we're all that. And I just had this moment where I'm like, wow, what if we could step outside of our stories like that?
Mm,
What if we could take a more objective lens, get in the hallway, whatever the hallway looks like for
yeah,
you? For me, it's writing, it's meditating, it's those kind of things that help me connect with something deeper in me. But what if we could get in the hallway and look at our life story as if it's this unfolding narrative and this play, and really examine the character, the main character, what drives them, what motivates them, what's their backstory, who are the other characters in the play, how did they impact the way this story went, and then to really understand that we have the power to write our narrative going forward, and to look at, are the characters in the play with me supporting the direction I want to go, or do they need to be written out? Do I need to add others? Do I need to make different choices to unfold the story that I want to write going forward? And so it takes people through a process where they can get a more objective perspective of their life. And I think that's so important because, just like you said, there's so much wisdom contained within the stories, even the ones that are painful or challenging to us. I mean, you and I wouldn't be doing
mhm,
what we're doing if we hadn't been through what we've been through. I've suffered
yeah.
anxiety my whole life, and it's an ongoing journey. So, it's those kind of things that drive you and motivate you. And when you heal from those, and when you get some perspective of those, then you're compelled to help others through their stories.
Yeah, yeah, and I love it, and I like the thought of, and this is one of some of what I talk about, not directly, but the thought of rewriting your narrative, right, and adding those characters that support you, and taking away those that don't, and I think if you look at it as in that space of a book, like you're writing your story, and being able to see it that way, that sometimes it even makes it easier for you to digest, right? So I
Right.
remember listening to one of my mentors doing a speech. He was doing a keynote, and he was talking about cutting off people that don't serve you well. And when he said it,
Mhm.
he was like, just cut them off, Then he was like, okay, I
Mhm.
can see by the reaction of the audience that that was kind of harsh to some of you guys. So he was like, well,
Right.
just rearrange them. You know what I mean? It's like said in a softer way where they could receive it. But it's that
Yep.
same narrative, like, you know what? Really taking ownership of your life and ownership of the people and places that impact you, and it's like, okay, if this is not serving me, let me move this around, and to
Mhm.
be able to kind of work that narrative, to get there. And I think that sometimes even in our own stories we find ourselves, not being able to get through some of the things that we deal with because we haven't
Mhm.
really faced the narrative as it is. One of the things that I do, I teach a workshop on forgiveness, and one of the
Mhm.
areas that I present on is forgiveness of self. Because
Mhm.
a lot of times, because of the stories and because of the things that we've been through in our past, we can't move forward because we're still holding grudges against ourselves for something we did
Yeah.
years ago. And I talk about
Yeah.
now, I'm 49, right? I'm gonna be 50
Mhm.
soon. And as a 21-year-old, I'm sure there was some decisions that I made that now
Mhm.
as a 50-year-old, I look back and be like, dude, you shouldn't have did that. But I have
Yeah.
to acknowledge, like, I was 21. Like, what did I know?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I
Right.
think that, sometimes we get caught up in our own stories and our own mistakes, should I say,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it blocks us from even moving forward. So when, you're talking to people about that narrative of, what I'm saying, moving forward, even from their own story and
Mhm.
breaking free from the story that holds them captive, like in this space, what are some
Yeah.
of the processes that, like, to even help them deal with that mindset of, what, let me break free of this, that I really can, change that narrative and begin to write that story, the new chapter of that story.
Yeah, yeah, self-acceptance and self-compassion, huge, for our healing process. I think of it, I have a wonderful 2-year-old I get to spend time with, and I've watched him kind of unfold, and, grow and discover things, and I think about when he was learning to walk, when he fell down, we didn't sit around and go, "What's wrong with you? What are you doing? You should have taken that step. Why did you fall down?" No,
Mhm.
you pick them back up and you go, it's okay, take another step, you're learning,
Yeah.
you're growing. So if we can think of ourselves that way, that yeah, we have missteps and we fall down, and sometimes we fall flat on our face, sometimes we hurt people unintentionally, sometimes we hurt ourselves. But if we think of ourselves as, we're having, I sort of look at it as we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mhm.
And so, in our humanity, we are in this classroom of learning and growing and figuring things out. And sometimes it's messy. I started my career as a NICU nurse, so I went to a lot of deliveries. They're messy when
Yeah.
things are being
Yeah.
born. The creative process is a messy deal. It's painful. It's sometimes you got to scream,
Mhm.
but there's something beautiful being born on the other side. And even in the pain that we're experiencing in our life, if we can think about what is the beautiful thing in the darkness, what is being born, how can I use that creative power to find something deeper in myself? So I always try to hold that space for, in our humanity, we've
Mhm.
we've got to accept that it's messy and we're not always going to get it right. And there's this spiritual being inside of us that knows, that's connected to wisdom, that's connected to something deeper, that is our resilience, that is our ability to overcome and hold such potential for us. So how can we hold both those things? We have two hands for a reason.
Yeah.
And we can, even in the messiness, go, wow, I did not get that right, or I didn't show up the way I wanted to there. What do I need to get from this so that next time I can
Mhm.
show up a little better? So it's a process, and it's one we're on for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that because I think that's one of the things that I even think about. When you're on that, thinking about the things that you've done and everything. Like it is a process, and you kind of working it through
Mhm.
and realizing. I've come to the point now in my life that again we both got into ministry, and one of the things that the Bible says that all things work for our good, right? And
Mm.
I've come to this space now, especially over the last 4 or 5 years since I've been started self-development and started the podcast and all the things that I'm doing now, to really being able to reflect back on different things that have happened in my life that at the moment didn't feel good. You know what I mean? It wasn't
Mhm.
a happy experience, should I say? But now at this point, it's like those things were working for me. I mentioned about having dealt with suicide ideation and depression, and of course, in the midst of that, like that did not seem good at all. But
Mhm.
on this side of it, I'm able to have those conversations now. I did my first
Mhm.
TEDx talk, and it was about my bout with suicidal ideation, and so I'm beginning to be able to see how the things that may not have been good in a moment, but not even
Mhm.
just the bad things, but even the good things in my life has gotten to the point where I can really see like, okay, all of these things is working for my benefit. And you mentioned
Yeah.
about looking for, finding the lesson. What do I need to learn in this moment? And I
Mm.
remember one of the things my old pastor used to say. He said people used to always ask him, how long would this test last? When they're going through things, and he always say it would last until you pass. You know what I mean? Like until
Mhm.
you learn the lesson that you're supposed to learn from it. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
like when you're in school, like you might get held back a couple of times, but you got to pass it. That's the only way to get through it. And so definitely being able to understand that process, and I think that's a goal that all of us need to kind of be on, to really be able to look at our lives in a way like, okay, what was I supposed to learn here, even in the good? Because I think sometimes in the good things, because it feels so good, we don't think it's a lesson. We just think like, I won. Like no, but
Yeah.
even in those things, there's a lesson to be learned to how to operate even in the good times. You know what I mean? Because our
Yep.
good times a lot of times prepare us for the bad times. And
Mhm.
because we've had good times, we know what bad times feel like because the contrast in it.
Yeah.
But I think that's a process that we all kind of go through. Um, One of the other things that I want to talk about, even in our highest points, for our highest
Mhm.
heights, where we talked about, and one of the things that you mentioned, and I want to go back to this a little bit. One of the things that you mentioned about being a spiritual being and a natural being, and definitely
Mhm.
doing being in ministry, there's always kind of been like the contrast. It's like it's the
Mhm.
spiritual man, and then it's the earthly man or your natural
Mhm.
man. It's like, yeah, but both of them together makes us who we are. Like we
Right.
can't separate them because we're the same person.
Mhm.
Even if we're actively moving in a certain area, that does
Mhm.
not neglect the other area. It's that area comes with us. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
that's always been like at least for me growing up in church, it always been like that battle of therapy or prayer. Like which one you supposed to lean
Mhm.
on? Like you're supposed to lean on both of them because you are
Right.
a being that is made up of both of them. You know,
Mhm.
but when we're thinking about even some of the things that we feel within ourselves that we can do, and some of the things
Mhm.
that are limitations that kind of hold us because of our past, because of some of our
Mhm.
expectations. We feel kind of limited on our greatness, and I think we limit ourselves because of the things that we've been through. So I want you to talk to us a little bit about that, like just kind of breaking through those limiting beliefs that we may have even within ourselves, and
Yeah.
being able to break free again from our past, those things that we've did in our past, and those things that has happened in our past that make us think like, oh man, I can't do it because I can't do this big thing because I failed at that thing. You know what I mean? So
Right.
talk to us a
Right.
little bit about just kind of breaking through those narratives.
Yeah. Yeah, and part of the process of looking at your story is also looking at the stories you've created about who you are and the influences that were around you that sort of defined you.
Mm,
And, I mentioned that I was always looking outside myself for that. That's why I got to college and I had horrible, anxiety and really had to finally face all of the times that I had contorted myself into somebody else
mm,
and ask
mm,
myself, okay, who are you really? Who are you authentically? And it became a lifelong journey of self-discovery. And so we have to break down our story and look at, what were the influences that defined us, the time that we were born, the place that we were born, the family we were born into, and the patterns and traditions and expectations that came with that. All the messages we get outside of ourselves. I mean, constantly we're being bombarded with messages in the media that say we're not enough. We're not thin
mhm,
enough. We're not young enough. We're not taking the right vacations, driving the right car, wearing the right thing, whatever it is. And so we have to break those down and look at them. And that's the process I try to take people through is, okay, that definition of who I am might have come from a comment somebody made that said, "What? You're not good at that. Why would you try to do that?" And then all of a sudden in my
mm,
head, I'm like, "Oh, I'm not good at that. I'm not going to try that." So breaking down those messages and those narratives and looking at the ones that, wow, this feels like me. I've been doing art my entire life. I am an artist. That is authentically me. My mom was an artist. It just feels like who I am. That's a story I want to hang on to. Then there's other stories where they might have served me for a time. They might have helped me
Mhm.
survive, a traumatic time. They might have
Right.
helped me get to a certain place in my life or my career. So they served me, but wow, that's not who I want to be going forward. It's time to rewrite that, or time to let that one go. Take the wisdom and what I've learned from it and move forward. And then there's the ones that are total crap to begin with, that, like I said, that somebody made a comment, or, you were in a situation, or you heard something, on a commercial or whatever,
Right.
and you got it in your head that this is who you needed to be. And it doesn't fit you. It never fit you.
Mhm.
Or, some of those patterns that our families pass on to us, well-meaning, everybody has their own experience and own story. And so, you know, um, most of the time people aren't setting out to hurt you or to to tell you a story
Right.
that's going to be damaging, but we have those family patterns that are not always healthy. And so we live them out. And if we don't take time to question those things, then we're living someone else's version of our life. And we're not living from that authentic place within us. And that authentic place is, showing up real, showing up with compassion for ourselves and others, showing up knowing that we always have potential within us that we can pull on. And that's that spiritual side for me, is that connection to, something beyond us, a higher
Mhm.
power, whatever your faith teaches you, that looks like. It's, drawing on that and knowing that I always have access to that. At the same time, I am having a human experience, and our human experiences connect each other. If I show up as, oh, I'm all that and I'm perfect and I've got everything going on, are you going to relate to somebody like that? Are you going to relate to the person who says, oh, you're never going to believe what I did yesterday? You
Mhm.
know, yeah, you're going to be like, oh, thank God I can be myself with them.
Right.
So it is that, how can you hold that space for each other and for yourself? But yeah, really breaking down those messages and paying attention. I just saw a commercial. I was watching the football game a few weeks ago, and I saw a commercial that started out, confidence doesn't come from within. And it went on to basically say, if you own this truck, then you have the right to be confident. And I was like, what? Like, how many of those messages are we getting constantly
Right.
that say, hey,
Yeah.
you're not enough? Well, you are enough. You are enough exactly where you are, wherever you are in your life, whatever you're going through. You are enough. You're worthy, you're deserving, and you're a beautiful being.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I like that. I like what you said, and I want to even touch on a little bit about the influence you mentioned about the things that you're
Mhm,
influenced by.
mhm,
The people that you're influenced by, the environment that you're influenced by, because a lot of times those play such a high
mhm,
role in our own, feelings of ourselves, feelings of our limitations, and sometimes of no thought of our own, just automatic because we
mhm,
look around us, and we talking about achievements, and it's like, well, when I look around me, I don't see anybody that went to college, so I guess college isn't
mhm.
for us. I look around
Yeah.
and I don't see any entrepreneurs, and so I guess entrepreneurship, and just from the influence around you and
Mhm,
things around you, and sometimes we have to take that initiative to be like, you know what, I'm going to step outside of the box. I'm going to step outside of, these limitations of my environment, even the limitations of my family. A lot of times, somebody has to go first, right?
yeah,
We have
yeah.
generations of families that just like, all right, we just workers and we work, work, work. And then somebody's like, well,
Mhm,
I thought about being an entrepreneur, and it may be lonely, you know what I'm saying? But we got,
yeah.
if you're going to do it, you got to be like, all right, I got to step outside of these influences of my family, of my neighborhood, of my
Mhm,
environment, and say, okay, this is what I'm gonna go for, and go for it. And
yeah.
one of the other things that I like that you asked about the question of who am I now, right? And that was a
Mhm,
question I even asked myself a couple years ago. When I talk about going through my depression and divorce and all the things that I was going through a couple years ago, all at the same time. the church that we had started, COVID hit. We ended up having to
Mhm.
shut the church down. My job, during that time period,
Mhm.
recession, that slowed down. So the work wasn't there. All my kids, my daughter is my only biological child, but I have four stepsons, and
Mhm.
all of them become of age. And now they're kind of, moving on to do their own thing as young adults. And, I'm going through I end up going through a divorce. And so now I'm like, okay, all of these things that I used to define myself are all broken away now, and so now
Mhm.
I'm standing here alone. It's like, all right, who am I now? Who am I in
Mhm.
this new space, without all of these things that I've used to define myself, in the last couple of years. I'm a pastor, I'm a father, I'm a,
Mhm.
bricklayer, I'm a this, I'm that, but now all of these things are kind of taken away in a sense. And it's like, okay, who
Mhm.
am I? And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's something important for us to look at, and it kind of comes with age as well, because like I said, I'm
Mhm.
almost 50 now. Kind of you get that midlife crisis, as they say, and
Mhm.
you start to reflect. But I think there's something that we do have to ask ourselves sometime and come to the realization of that, like, okay, I may be coming into a new season, and
Mhm.
embrace it instead of being like, oh my God, and just fall apart about it, but really just taking the time and say, you know what? I think this is new season. Who am I now? How do I want to be known? You know what I mean? Who is the person I want to be known as? Because am I still a father? Yes, but all my kids are grown. They're adults now. So I don't have little kids, I'm still a construction worker, even if the economy has went down, I'm still that person, and just really being able to define who I am in the moment. And I think that we all need to go through that season that we ask ourselves, okay, who
Yeah,
am I really? And ask yourself that, 'cause like you said,
right.
not taking on the ideas from the outside of who everyone else say I am, but who do I believe that I am? And then who do I want to be? Who do I want to show up as? And I think when we start having that conversation with ourselves, it really starts to transform the way that we show up, in the world, and the way that
Mhm.
we want to show up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I am continually preaching the power of reinvention, because I think you should reinvent yourself at least every decade, if not every day.
Mhm.
Because yeah, if not, you're not changing, you're not growing,
Yeah.
you're not evolving, right? And I think I watched my mother in a sense do that. She was oldest of seven, came from a very poor family, had to drop out in ninth grade to take care of other kids, and then ended up getting pregnant and having to get married. And so there was all this past that she carried, but she had the most incredible vocabulary, and she dressed as a really classy woman, and you would never know she came from that past. Now, she never healed the shame that she carried with that.
Mhm.
And so a lot of that was, I'm going to put this face on for the world,
Mhm.
but I've got all this stuff inside. But I saw that in her story, she had reinvented herself. And so, yeah, for me, I think it was my first thought that, wow, you don't have to be who you were. You can be anything that you want to be. And so to go on from whatever your story is, and yeah, sometimes it's just life circumstances. Sometimes it's growing older. Sometimes it's kids, leaving home. Sometimes it's losing a job, whatever it is. That is a creative opportunity for you. And I talk about, I've done sermons around how being, hell in the hallway, when one door closes and another doesn't open yet, and you're just hanging out there going, okay, who am I? Where am I going? What's happening? On the other hand, there's a whole lot of doors in front of you, and all possibilities are in front of you because you haven't headed in a direction yet. So, how about you just sit in that for a little bit and say, okay, if I were just going to take the edges off my definition of who I am and just get wild and think about all the crazy ideas I've ever had, about all the dreams I've had, all the possibilities that have crossed my mind, and just play with that. Like, just give yourself permission to play with that. And it doesn't have to make sense, and you don't have to know how to do it. And there's probably things on the list that you wouldn't choose. But what if you just, sat and on a piece of paper started writing down, yeah, what if I did this? What if I dreamed of that? What if I accomplished that? And just, let yourself be free to play,
Yeah.
then something might emerge from that. Once you get out of the box, it
Yeah.
just opens up things for you, and you start to pay attention to, wow, somebody last week asked me to do this and I didn't even think about it, but maybe I should.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's amazing. When we start to recognize ourselves and being able to again go through that process and, like you said, read. And I think that's good too. Like, you have to consistently reinvent yourself because
Yeah.
everything else is changing. Like, you
Yeah.
can't stay still and stay the
Right.
same in a world that's always changing. Like, you have to do some
Right.
changing too, just to hang
Yeah.
in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to
And
try
so
to
many
try to
people
maintain.
Yeah, so many people right now are rethinking their purpose because we live in a crazy time and
Mhm.
so much is going on around us. And so people, I think, are really stopping and going, wow, how do I want to show up? Who do I want to be?
Yeah,
What can I contribute in this world going forward? So that idea of reinventing yourself, yeah, it's a very powerful thing to give yourself permission to do that. And sometimes it's just that, give yourself permission. And a lot of times I'm asked, what do I do if I'm stuck? I'm just feeling stuck and I don't know where to go. I'm like, do one thing that makes you uncomfortable. Doesn't have to be a
yeah,
huge thing, maybe take a class in Italian, go learn pottery, whatever.
yeah,
Something that you've never done before that gets you out of your normal routine. Take a different route to work, have lunch with somebody you don't know. Whatever it is that makes you a little uncomfortable, when you start leaning into that, then you realize, wow, if I get uncomfortable, I open up to new possibilities and new
mm,
experiences. And what if I got really uncomfortable and decided that I wanted to, go back to school or whatever you've thought of or dreamt of. So,
yeah.
yeah, leaning into that is really important.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, Robert, before we get out here, I want to talk about your book. I want you to
Yeah.
kind of talk to us about the book, and what is the premise of it, and what do you hope that the readers will take out of it once they finish reading it.
Yeah. Well, it's all the stuff we've talked about. So there's a lot of stories in there of reinvention. A lot of every chapter is followed by an opportunity for you to look at your story, to look at the ways you've defined yourself, to start to let go of that, to live from a more authentic place, what that looks like. So it really is a hands on process that you can go through to help tap into that potential and your authentic self and start to live that out in a more powerful way. And so yeah, and it's something that really fits, I think, where we are in the world, where most of us are in our
Mm,
lives of continually trying to find meaning in the things that maybe don't make sense to us in the
right,
moment, but
right.
yeah, we can find meaning and can find power in that. So that is my hope, that people go through that process and they find something deeper in themselves that says, yeah, I can do that thing that I want to do. I can show up as my authentic self and be okay with that. So, yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. Robin, I thank you so much for being on and for coming on and sharing your expertise and your story with us. I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, motivation, however you feel, and also leave us with your social media handles and things of that nature. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. To my audience, thank you guys for tuning in once again to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I want you guys to make sure you guys are checking us out on our website. I want you to check out my new website, which is ernestjamesspeakslife.com. That is my personal website for to be, you guys can hire me to come out to be a speaker or to lead a workshop at your school or organization and just find more information about me, myself. So again, that's ernestjamesspeakslife.com. Make sure you guys are checking us out there, as well as make sure you guys are checking us out on our main website. Definitely, it needs an overhaul and it's going to get one soon. But the dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org. Which is our main website, which gives more information about everything that we have going on. So you guys can go there and check us out. Also, ebooks by ejames.com. I definitely have several ebooks that I've written that you guys can check out. One of them I talked a little bit about earlier that I believe is doing very well right now, which is Forgiving Me, the 4-step guide to self forgiveness. And I kind of walk you through the 4 steps of the acronym SELF, which helps you to begin to forgive yourself for some of the things that you may have done in your past, and it kind of walks you through that process. So you guys can find all of my ebooks again at ebooks by ejames.com. Again, that's ebooks by ejames.com. And while you're there, if you decide that you really like them, you can become an affiliate of my ebooks and gain 50% of the purchase price whenever someone purchases using your special link. So again, go to ebooks by ejames.com. Check out the ebooks for yourself. And if you really are inspired and love them, then become an affiliate and share them with others and make some money on the side. So you guys can do that as well. We talked a little bit earlier about our inspirational t-shirt line, which is the deal to healtees.com. Deal, the number 2, healtees.com, where you can find your inspirational t-shirts as well as our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast and also one for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Both of those are there. Again, that's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Make sure you guys go there and check that out. And last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly discussing the areas of forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, even forgiveness of the world, because we believe that forgiveness is a missing part in our world today that will make things so much easier for us once we begin to be able to give each other forgiveness and also forgive ourselves. That way we can move forward. So you guys can sign up for the free virtual workshop at forgivenessmission.com, or you can just go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop, sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. The workshops are absolutely free, but the information is priceless. So make sure you guys go there whenever you're listening to this episode. Either one just ended or there's one coming up. So you can sign up for our free virtual workshops at forgivenessmission.com. All right. So again, Miss Robin, I want to say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you so very much for coming in and sharing your expertise. So I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for what you do, Ernest, and the difference you're making in the world. And I love that. Put some inspiration in your situation. I'm gonna have to use that. I love it. So yeah. First of all, just the details. My book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, the online site. So it's The Phoenix Effect: Transcend Limitation and Ignite the Power Within You. You can also find me on my website, robin-ferguson.com. So please hop on there, check it out. If you want me to come out and speak to your organization, or if you're interested in having some coaching support as you walk through this process, just reach out to me and we can have a conversation. I would love to talk to you. I'd love to hear your story. And I'd just like to leave you with this idea. There's all kinds of messages going on around us that say you're not enough. And I want to tell you that you are. You are enough. You are precious. You are whole. You are an amazing, beautiful, creative human being. And whatever you're going through right now, it's okay. You are still that. No matter what has happened in your life, no matter the choices you have made, you are an amazing, incredible, beautiful being on this earth. And we need you. We need your difference. We need you to be you, because it's the unique gift that you bring to the world. And right now we all need to bring our unique gifts to the world and come together and shine. So blessings to you, and lots of love.
All right. All right. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. To deal with your problems, to heal from the pain,
Mhm.
and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys for tuning in one more time to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Until next time, you guys be blessed.
Mhm.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.